right. Hello again, adventures, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is number 11. So today, had a really awesome viewer mention yesterday that I should get into podcasting. Because a lot of times I like to just kind of turn on one of my YouTube videos, play it in the background, or play it with the screen off or whatever. And my brain took that as, you've got a face for radio. No, just kidding. This is not the first time someone has recommended that I start a podcast or something similar to it, and I've actually done that. I've actually guested on a couple podcasts. Probably the ones I'll see if I can. The one that I am most familiar with, because my brain lets me remember it. Buddy of mine named Don Diego does a podcast every so often called My RPG Podcast, and I've been on there twice. Which is really fun. I love hanging out with Don. He's one of my favorite people in the world, because he is such a kind of positive force when you're around him, and he's also crazy intelligent. So yeah, Don's super cool. I will see if I can't find a link to the episodes of his podcast that I'm in and put them in the description if you would like to see me in a podcasty style format. That being said, I started my own podcast that lasted, I think, for 4 or 5 sessions. Basically what it was I would invite people on and we would talk about different D&D classes, and really what we feel makes those classes special, and then we would kind of talk about how we would homebrew stuff for the specific stuff that we'd like to see homebrewed for those particular classes. And yeah, it was fun. I got to talk to a lot of cool people. Don Diego was on there. Who else was on there? My buddy the Jerd was on there. I had William SRD, who is a D&D YouTuber that I met. Due to the fact that William SRD, great guy. William SRD made a video that I think it was called something to the effect of the Critters Guide to D&D YouTube. And what he did was he was into Critical Role, and he's like, well, if you're into Critical Role and you're kind of like me, you're relatively new, here's, D&D YouTube, and here are some D&D YouTubers that you can watch. And in the video, I wasn't mentioned at all because I'm a very, very tiny creator. And so it did not surprise me at all that I did not get any notice in that video. But because I'm a dork, I went to the video because I watched the video. It was recommended to me on YouTube. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And I just made this kind of passive-aggressive joke. Where I was like, oh, yeah, just completely ignore the D&D YouTuber that's been doing this for, I think at that point I was doing it for 8 or 9 years. And I'm like, yeah, forget the guy who's been doing it for 8 or 9 years and actually showed up multiple times on Critical Role and made the Critical Role cast cry. Let's just ignore him. William responded to it, which I wasn't expecting. And it's like, oh, dude, I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, nobody does. Nobody watches my shit. And so I made another one, and he featured me in that one. I felt very seen. And then we started up a conversation, and yeah, we're acquaintances. I wouldn't call us friends or anything like that because he has his stuff that he does, and I have my stuff that I do. But we know of each other. We talk every so often. And he's a really cool guy. So check out his stuff. He focuses on D&D video games, and the reviews that he does, really high quality. First of all, and second of all, are he picks really interesting games. And oh man, he did a review of Dark Sun, Shattered Lands, which is one of my favorite D&D games ever. It was one of the first D&D games I ever played. It's the reason I love the Dark Sun setting. It's amazing. And he's not as taken with the game as I am, which is true of most people. It was not a massively well-received game, and there's lots of glitches in it. But it's super fun, and the world itself is really, really interesting. But one of the things that had never occurred to me that he brought up is the music for Dark Sun. He called it like jazz, which I am a jazz musician. I'm a jazz vocalist. I have literally studied jazz theory. I probably would not classify it strictly as jazz. But a lot of the points he made about it were pretty spot on as far as the music was concerned, and I'd never noticed. Like, a lot of the music for a post-apocalyptic, when people think of post-apocalyptic stuff, they think like heavy metal and that. And these, like, the songs are bangers, don't get me wrong, but yeah, they're not your traditional post-apocalyptic thing. And I love it because of that, because it feels very unique to Dark Sun. But yeah, anyway, so he's a cool dude. So as far as doing a podcast, the reason that I don't do a podcast is it's a pain in the ass, to be blunt. I actually helped, I guess you could call, revive Zelda Universe, the website that I run my Zelda RPG for. They have a podcast which used to be called the ZU Cast, and I think now it's the Zelda Universe podcast. I can't remember what they're calling it right now. However, the podcast itself was extremely infrequent, and it wasn't. It had some problems. Let's put it that way. And because I am technically part of the leadership team over at ZU, because I run Tears of the Realm, and so because I have people that technically report to me, which are my players, they put me in the leadership team. That I sometimes show up for meetings and sometimes don't. Yeah. More often than not, don't. But anyway, so that was one of the things that we talked about in the leadership meetings a lot was, hey, what's happening with the podcast? And it just wasn't going super well. And so I approached one of the members of the leadership team that I've known for years and said, hey, I have a degree in project management. Do you want me to get this thing off the ground? And he pitched it to the rest of the leadership team. Like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And so I was technically involved in kind of resurrecting the ZU Cast, and now, on average, the ZU Cast is putting out a show every other month, which compared to before, where they would get like one show a year, maybe. And the kind of quality of these shows, not to say that the previous version was bad in any way, but the quality was very, very inconsistent, where sometimes you would have some really interesting stuff, and then other times it would be kind of a boring podcast and stuff like that. The podcast is significantly more consistent, and again, I think last year they did, I want to say 4 podcasts, so and they didn't start until I think mid-February. So overall, significantly better than it has been. And I'm still in contact with everyone that runs a podcast. So if I wanted to jump on the podcast, I would probably have absolutely no problem doing that. So yeah, like I can podcast, but getting a podcast set up, like the podcast, the ZU Cast has a manager that kind of oversees it, has 2 hosts, and then has another 4 segment producers for every single episode. So that's what, if my math's correct, that's 7 people. and that's not counting. They have an editor that puts everything together, and then they have to link up with a couple other a couple other teams on Zelda Universe to make sure it gets uploaded to the right places. Like, it is a monumental effort to run it, and the ZU Cast is not a particularly complex podcast. It's more complex than, say, two people just turning on mics and talking. But compared to something like Good Mythical Morning, which I consider a podcast. It may be a YouTube series, but it's very much podcast-esque. Compared to something like that, they're a very small operation. So the reason that I am not podcasting is entirely because it's just more work than I can handle. Being able to just turn on a camera and talk is something that I can do. Having to structure something, because if you're going to do a podcast, you really do need some sort of structure. It doesn't have to be heavily structured or anything like that, but having something there to give it guidance and form is kind of essential. And also, single person podcasts just don't really do super well in the market. Generally, you want at least two people. Most of the podcasts that get real popular tend to have at least two people and then a guest every week or something like that, where you have 3 or 4 people on the podcast. And yeah, I have a decent number of friends in the tabletop RPG community, in the YouTube community, in the Twitch community. Getting them to do something on a fixed schedule is a nightmare. When we had the hiatus between Campaign 1 and Campaign 2 for Zelda Universe, I reached out to, I want to say, maybe 2 dozen people. I can't remember anymore. Overall, I think I was able to get like 3 or 4 guest players, and we had one guest run game run by some friends of the channel that I technically didn't have. I was not the driving force of that collaboration. It was actually Elias, one of the head of the Twitch channel for Zelda Universe, and one of my players in Realms. Yeah, like it's a nightmare to get people's schedules to line up, especially if you're dealing with people that do streaming, because the overall mindset of most streamers, and this is any platform, this is not exclusive to Twitch, this is any platform, is if I'm not streaming, I'm losing money. And so getting them to record content for something that is not going to be on their stream is unbelievably difficult. And I know a lot of more smaller creators than large creators, because large creators don't quite have to be as tied to their analytics as smaller creators are, will simply refuse to do anything if they can't stream it at the same time. Which, from a marketing perspective and a business perspective, is a massively stupid move. And I mentioned that when I talked about, I made that video in Daily December about talking about how to run a successful live play stream. And one of the things I mentioned in there is only one person gets to stream it. There are lots of different ways to revenue share and audience share and stuff like that are built into Twitch already. The kind of guest feature that affiliates and partners can do now really takes a lot of the penalty for not streaming away. Because that's another thing that's fun. At least on Twitch, I'm not as familiar with how YouTube and like Kick and other things like that work. But I know at least on Twitch, if you are not streaming for whatever reason, it hurts your channel. Especially if it's a time when you normally stream and you just don't stream that night, it hurts your channel and rankings and a bunch of other things. Like you won't see it on like the Twitch streamers page, but all in the back end, it's real bad. The guest feature, which is basically when you create the title, you can type @ and then the channel name of someone else that's showing up on your channel. that will let Twitch know that they're still technically streaming and they're just on another platform. It allows for revenue sharing and other things like that. So that feature in and of itself is a really good way to stop splitting audiences and stuff like that. But even with that there, a lot of Twitch streamers aren't aware that the feature exists. Even more may understand that it exists but don't understand how it works because they never really focused on it. And so I know a lot of Twitch streamers that will straight up refuse to do collaborations with anyone if they are not also streaming the collaboration, which is a monumentally stupid thing. And it hurts your growth infinitesimally. But it's their decision. So long story short, the reason that I don't do podcasts is not because I don't want to. It's because it's so much work that my mental health just won't let me do. Which sucks because again, I like podcasts. To be perfectly honest, I like being on podcasts. The few podcasts that I have done have been immensely fun, and I would love to just become a podcaster. But it's simply not a viable option for me. I would have to put so much work and effort into it to get a podcast gig going. And then, like most of the other times I've tried to have, because I've had multiple podcasts that I've done. I had one called The Plot Hook In, which I don't think I was the host of. I can't actually remember. No, I had to be because I created overlays and stuff for it. So I had The Plot Hook In, which was on the All for Geek Alliance, my collab channel. And that was fun, but it only lasted for a few months because, again, scheduling's a nightmare. I had the one where we talked about homebrewing for D&D, which is supposed to be a limited podcast series, and even that I didn't get to complete. And then again, I talked in Daily December about doing a podcast where I just invite someone on, we build some characters in a random RPG system, and we just talk. Because I think that would be an incredibly interesting podcast. Because some of the best conversations I've had have been when I've been sitting down with a new player, building their character and kind of talking about the stuff that is inspiring the character. That stuff is super, super fun. That is not a thing. And I sincerely doubt it's ever going to be a thing, despite the fact that I think it'd be an amazing podcast. It's just too difficult to get guests, especially at the size of my channel. When I reach out to any creator and go, hey, would you like to be on a podcast with me? One of the things that most creators will do is they will look at my reach. And I'll go, oh, you have less than 1,000 subscribers. You're not a partner. Okay. And then they'll look at my Twitter. Oh, you have like less than 1,000 followers on Twitter. There's really no benefit for me doing this because I'm not going to see a huge increase in my audience, but you are going to benefit incredibly from my audience. So this is entirely a one-sided deal. It's not in my favor. I'm not going to do it. So the only people that I theoretically could get on my podcast are people that are the same size as me as far as reach is concerned. And most of them are still in the mindset of, if I'm not doing something for me, then it's bad. If I'm not streaming it, then I can't do it. That kind of thing. A lot of times it's just the size of my YouTube channel and the size of my reach is massively detrimental to my ability to get guests. And then there's the issue of, if I could get guests, scheduling is a nightmare. It was one of the weird things because I started that podcast where I was just having people talk about different characters and homebrewing. That was in the middle of lockdowns where everybody had free time, and I still couldn't get people to agree. Like, it was nonsense how difficult it was. And I'm super, super thankful for everyone that did do it. Like I said, my buddy, his name's Jeff Miller, or Mueller. but his online moniker is the Mighty Jerd. I had not had a chance to interact with him in years, just because we run in different circles, and he has an actual job, and I'm on disability. So yeah, we hadn't had a chance to connect in a long time, and it was massively fun. If I remember correctly, he did the Bard episode, because Bards are really really cool, especially in fifth edition. And yeah, we had a blast doing it, and being able to talk with William SRD was super super fun, and I had Don on, and I actually had a buddy of mine back from my convention circuit days, that I still keep in contact with, and I just kind of said, "Hey, do you want to talk about some homebrew stuff?" He's like, "Yeah, sure," and that was just super blessed because I hadn't talked to him in like 5 or 6 years, because it had been so long since I'd been involved in conventions. So yeah, was it super super fun? Absolutely. Do I want to do it again? Absolutely. Do I think it's viable? Absolutely not. Yeah, it's sad because I personally think, I would make a great podcaster, but due to my extensive amount of disabilities and health issues, and the fact that I would be fighting an uphill battle because I'm super super tiny, it's just not something that I can do, and it sucks. But this is just how it is, and it's nobody's fault. I'm not saying, man, if it wasn't for those big podcasters not caring about the little guy. No, there is no reason for like a major podcast or anything like that to look at me approaching them and saying, "Hey, I'd love to be on your podcast," or "Would you like to be on my podcast?" and them completely ignoring that email. There's nothing wrong with that. It is completely justified. They have very, very, again, I've already mentioned doing a podcast is a pain in the ass. They already have a shit ton of work that they're doing. There is no obligation and no incentive for them to create extra work for themselves just to help me do something that I probably won't be able to continue with because of my health. So this is not me, yelling at the world and going, "Well, this isn't fair. If I could just do this, then my life would be a lot better." It wouldn't be. My life sucks. And the vast majority of the reasons that my life sucks has nothing to do with anyone actively trying to hurt me. There's a few things, like the person that abused me when I was a child. They're not not a good person. They're also in prison. So, but yeah, aside from like the trauma that created my PTSD, all my other issues are biological, and physiological. The fact that I can't take medication for any of my anxiety disorders is nobody's fault. I'm hypersensitive to serotonin syndrome. So SSRIs, SNRIs, MAOIs, they will all just kill me outright dead in a few weeks to a month of being on them. The reason I know this is because I was on them for less than a week and nearly died. Should have died. And just because I had a brilliant primary care physician that noticed the signs of serotonin syndrome, got me off the meds real quick. And even that, I was put on benzos because of the side effects, and it did permanent brain damage as far as I can tell. So yeah, and again, none of that is anybody's fault. They were reacting to a really bad situation in the best way possible. The only person that I really blame for that is the initial psychiatrist that effectively strong-armed me into taking the meds when I was committed. They did some unethical shit. But I don't even remember what they look like, much less what their name was, so I have no idea if they're even still practicing. But yeah, so I'd love to do podcasting, I really would. It's just not something that's viable for me. This daily vlogging in and of itself is probably the most I can commit to, and it's the reason why I'm keeping with the daily vlogging. I've spoken with my therapist about it, and we both kind of believe that this is a good thing for my mental health because it grounds me slightly. If I was to turn my daily vlogs into a podcast of some sort, it would probably start creating more anxiety and stress and turn it from a net positive to a net negative. So, yeah. One day, if I can ever get to the point where I can get some of the side effects of my various mental disorders under control, where they're not absolutely ruining my life, I would love to try and do something more extensive. Um, I would love to get off disability, to be perfectly honest. If I could make money off my YouTube channel or my Twitch streams or something like that, enough where it didn't have to be on disability, I would love that. But it's simply not viable right now. I have no idea about the future. And I'm not, I've been noticing that my subscriber count has been dropping a little bit, which is normal for this time of the year. But my brain is basically telling me, well, it's because you're daily vlogging. People hate it. I have already recorded the next Designing New Dragons. I just have to upload it and put timestamps in and create a thumbnail for it. So that I'm planning on doing today, right after I finish recording this. So that will be something coming up. I've not thrown away the stuff that most people started looking at this channel for, which is my tabletop RPG stuff. Like I said, the daily vlogging thing is just something that is useful for my own mental health right now. And I think people are enjoying some of them. So we'll see. I've thought about starting like a daily vlog channel or something like that. And with how tiny my main channel is, it's just never seemed like a good idea to start a separate channel for something else. But if enough people are like, you know what, I really only come to this channel for your Designing New Dragons and stuff, and I hate that my feed gets filled up with these stupid daily vlogs that I don't care about, I might consider doing something like that, just so that people that don't want to see this in their subscription feed don't have to. Like I said, anytime I add an additional step into something, like creating a separate channel to upload things, that creates an additional way for my brain to decide that I'm not going to do it. So that's why I'm just doing the daily vlogs here right now. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, but done this for 11 days, and aside from forgetting to upload one of them one day, I've been consistent. So we'll see where it goes. It is the 11th today, right? Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for the comment. For the life of me, I can't remember. I can look it up because I'm at my computer right now. Very cool tricks. Thank you so much for the comment. I really, really do appreciate every time somebody says something nice in my channel, and especially when they give me kind of, I guess I could call this feedback, where they give me suggestions about stuff that they would like to see. I really, really enjoy that, and I would love to make a podcast for you and other people that would be interested, and I just physically can't. That's all it is. Yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. But who knows? Like I said, things are changing every single day. There are new therapeutic treatments that can be used to pharmaceutically treat anxiety and depression and other things like that. So there's always a chance that there will be something that makes my life bearable, and that will open up a lot of avenues for me. Again, I've got a business degree, and as I've mentioned many times before, running a YouTube channel, running a Twitch channel is running a business. And the reason why a lot of creators burn out has everything to do with the fact that they're looking at it as like a fun project and not as a business, and get burnt out very, very quickly when they realize that they have to treat it as a business, and they don't like that. Creatives in general, for some odd reason, have this huge aversion to business and economics and profit. I'm like, oh no, I'm a sellout. No, you're existing in a capitalist society. That's how it works. So yeah, I think if it weren't for all the crap that's going on in my head and my body, I think I could run a relatively successful YouTube channel or Twitch stream. I just can't physically put in the work necessary to go anywhere with it right now. Which again sucks, but it is what it is. So we'll see. And again, it might be a Dunning-Kruger kind of thing where I think I know a lot more than I actually do about running a YouTube channel. I don't think that's true because I have crippling self-doubt, but it's always theoretically possible. So, because I have had a few people where I've said, all you need to do is do this. It's like, well, you just don't understand. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm not a massive major streamer, so it's theoretically possible. I don't understand, but your growth has stagnated for like 2 years. So obviously what you're doing isn't working, and I'm suggesting doing something different, which might be worse, it might be the same, or it might be better. So if those 3 options are all equally likely, that's a 67% chance of not hurting you in any way, shape, or form, and a 33% chance of actually helping you. So maybe you can get your head out of your ass and try something new. Anyway, that's going to be all for me today. At least in this. Like I said, I'm going to try getting the Designing New Dragons video uploaded right after this. So we'll see. But again, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate everybody that comments on the videos. I always I read every single one of them. And I will continue to do that until there are too many comments for me to legitimately read on a regular basis, which is not going to happen for a very long time. But yeah, anyway, it's all for me today. I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right? Bye-bye.